Hello, today I want to talk about the difference between the Nazis and the neo-Nazis because every video I see, the definition is that the neo-Nazis are just Nazis after the Second World War, which is not really correct because everything evolves and so does ideology. So let's explain what Nazism is from a structural standpoint. So Nazism is, of course it is before and during the Second World War, those who were member of the NSDAP, the Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party. So it was a party, it had a 25-point program, it had a leader, it had a hierarchical structure. So everybody who was a member of that party was considered a Nazi or a National Socialist. That's why when later after the war some people were convicted of war crimes that were fighting for Germany but were not citizens of the Reich, they were considered Nazi collaborators because they were not members of the NSDAP. Well, in the modern sense, after the Second World War, the new National Socialists, they don't have one party, so there are a lot of parties from different parts of the world, so they don't have one leader, they don't have the 25 points. Some parties have different kinds of points with different number of points. Some parties have different priority than others, so we can see that it's much more decentralized than, of course, the original one. Next, we need to speak about the important part, that is the racial ideology, and there are some differences here, definitely. And first, we need to dismiss some myths surrounding the original ideology so that you can understand how it evolved into the ideology of today. So first, idea of blue eyes and blonde hair, well, that's not really a thing, that came later from Hollywood movies. In the original sense, the Reich was primarily, I would say, nationalist ideology. Why? So we have that idea of Aryan, what they used to say Aryan. So what is Aryan? Aryan was said to be not a racial classification but linguistic classification, which is just a synonym for European. So we can divide that Aryan race into subgroups of Nordic, Mediterranean, East Baltic, Alpine and Dinaric. So in Germany they used to say that the Nordic race is the best, and Nordic people are mostly in Germanic countries, but the one who has the most aspects is the Reich itself. So the idea was that people who are of Nordic heritage should be Germanized in wherever they are, even if they are not in Germanic countries, let's say in Poland or France. But also other people of other Aryan subgroups could become citizens of the Reich. We have a lot of records of that, and even during the Nuremberg laws, they said that anybody can become a citizen if he is of German or related blood and of good character. So also what that implies, what they actually imply, they said, so a Danish, a Czech, Pole and Italian can become full citizen of the Reich if they fulfill the criteria of, how will I put it, the loyalty to the Reich. Well, now in the modern sense, after Second World War, that idea of Nordicism is in most parts not really a thing anymore. It doesn't really matter what kind of white you are. You can be a Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, Russian, Czech, Serb, Greek. Nobody really cares. Some groups, they do still go to the idea of Nordicism, but they are a minority. And also we have some different kind of group, let's say the Rusic group in Russia, that goes more like a Russian supremacy. They are white supremacists, but they do think that the Russians are the chosen people. But in a general sense, most group will not care. The next idea is the idea of Lebensraum or living space, or how we would call it today, irredentism. So in the original sense, we definitely see that the original National Socialists were irredentists because we had the Second World War. They did occupy northern France, later the entirety of France, Eastern Europe, and they did it why? So the idea of Lebensraum was, although Germany back then was an industrial society, most of its population was still agricultural. So they did need a space for production and expansion to support that high population, because they had the biggest population in Europe behind the Soviet Union. In the modern sense, so after the Second World War, the idea of irredentism, again, in most parts is not popular, because as we can see, we are now a highly industrial society, so we don't really need to expand national borders. And also the new National Socialists would see that the fight between different Europeans is mostly negative, and it will negatively impact the entire continent. Although we do see differences that some people do support irredentism, some groups, like again if we say the Russisch group that fights in the Ukrainian war on the Russian side, and in general try to gain more territory for the Russian Empire. Most group, as we see in the National Socialists, will support the Ukrainian fight for their territory and independence and even join them. Then the next part would be religion. This one is a little more complex but still cohesive. So the regional National Socialists had the idea, so they were definitely not Christian, they were not favor of Christianity. What I'm saying here is I'm talking about top members, so Hitler, his inner circle, and higher members in general, most of them. So they were not for Christianity, but you cannot be an atheist. That was also not a thing. You couldn't be an atheist. So on most part, they were like privately anti-Christian, and they tried to subtly change the way of which people see religion, because in the end most people in Germany back then was some kind of Christian, either Catholic or Protestant. But if we see what they're trying to do in the SS, we had that idea of Gottesglaube, which is basically believing in God, which was an idea to remove the Jewish influence from Christianity and replace the Jewish God some sort of neo-pagan God, but still in a monotheistic sense that will gradually transform into some sort of new wave of new paganism. But that was a subtle change. It didn't really have much effect in general. I think there was only a small percentage of the SS that had the religion. In the modern National Socialists, on the other hand, don't really care what you are. You can be a Christian, Muslim, an atheist, a pagan, Hindu, whatever you want to be. But in the general way, they do prefer paganism, but original European neo-paganism, not this new Germanic monotheistic paganism. But they don't really care what you are, because religion is seen more on the private side of things than actually that important. Although some groups do try to gradually transform into old neo-pagans, their members. The last one would be the economical differences, and this is because, like I said, there was the party NSDAP was a party, so they had a plan and a program, and they focused their program and plan on Germany and later on the conquered territory. And in the new sense, because we have different groups, it's not a centralized movement. Some groups try to be more like international groups, some try to be national, local, regional. So they have to adapt to their environments, what they think is the best way to move forward their idea in their specific situation. So the conclusion here is there are differences. Some are bigger, some are less big, some are more important, some are less important, but those are still differences, and we can see that the movement evolves forward into something newer. It adapted as time goes on, it adapted as everything else. But so the point here is when people say it's just neo-Nazis are just Nazis after the Second World War, it comes across really ignorant and uneducated and stupid, because it really oversimplifies the whole situation and the ideology behind it.